This fact just makes flat earthers look more dumb. What widely believed historical fact is actually totally false? There has never been a Viking helmet found that had a horn attached to it. There are several horned helmets in the Danish National Museum, but they are from the Bronze Age and very obviously ceremonial. Horns would have been impractical, could get you fucked in an actual battle. I heard someone describe them like the perfect thing for an enemy to grab. I imagine it would be fun to grab during Viking-themed sex, but an actual battle? I'll go with the smooth helmet. It really isn't about grabbing. It makes a weak spot in the helmet, so if you just hit the horn with a weapon, it would literally wring their brains out. Would definitely not recommend. Thinking on it, you could also grab it too. Lol. Just don't put horns on your helmet, okay? For most of recorded history, people knew the earth was spherical, at least until the 21st century came to fix that. Flat Earth Society, we have members all over the globe. This fact just makes flat earthers look more dumb. Yep, the ancient Greece already proved this long ago. Also, the reason nobody initially wanted to fund Columbus is not because they thought Earth was flat, but because for all they knew it would be a very long voyage across a huge sea, which was super risky and costly. Cleopatra was actually not an Egyptian and belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family of Greek origin that ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great. Her family actually refused to speak Egyptian, and she was the first to learn the language. How many centuries does your family need to have lived in a country before you can claim it as your own? Well, I suppose the Ptolemaics claimed Egypt as their own from the outset. But you know what I mean. A lot of the pharaohs were not of Egyptian ancestry. Ancient Egypt got taken over a couple of times. I think at one stage there was probably even a red-headed pharaoh. Hitler was born in Austria. We actually don't even know exactly where he was from, as his dad had confusing origins. Marie Antoinette was Austrian as well. Napoleon was French by citizenship but Italian-blooded. Stalin was Georgian and didn't even speak Russian until he was an adult. Marie Antoinette also never said "let them eat cake." That phrase was often used in political literature and cartoons to mock leaders. The phrase was used with many, but it stuck with her. Maria Theresa, Antoinette's mother, had 16 children. 13 survived infancy and went on to become dukes, kings, archbishops, etc. She also fought or personally commanded in at least one battle, while pregnant. Marie Antoinette was one of her favorite children. She did not shy away from playing favorites. Doesn't seem like she was the warmest individual, but holy Roman Empire, shit, was she badass. Late medieval plate armor, for battle, wasn't so heavy that you needed a crane to get up a horse. Also, you could move pretty well, you just got exhausted faster. Depended on your fitness. Fact remains that some knights were hoisted. Particularly in tournaments where injured knights still wanted to joust. Wasn't tourney plate also massively heavier than combat plate? In combat you need mobility and range of motion so you don't die, but in jousting it's much more important to not get injured / accidentally kill someone important. This is my understanding too. 16th century kings were out there jousting. Armor for that peacetime, entertainment application used really heavy armor. It was never, ever meant to be used in actual warfare.
Newton didn't come up with the law of gravitation after being hit with an apple. Well, it's rather obvious, isn't it? How would the apple have been able to fall in the first place, if it wasn't for Newton's invention of gravity? Back in my day, we didn't have gravity. We just had the serving boy pull us down with rope. Now as for how the serving boy got down there, that's another story.
I suppose it's not totally false, as there's no universal consensus on this, but it's pretty widely accepted among experts that, contrary to popular belief, slaves did not build the pyramids. You mean to tell me that Academy Award-winning film The Prince of Egypt lied to me? I'm pretty sure they were building the Sphinx, not the pyramids. And yes, the movie did lie to you. There is no historical or archaeological evidence of a large Jewish slave population in ancient Egypt. Nor is there evidence of any of the plagues or the Red Sea splitting in two and swallowing an entire Egyptian army. There's a lot that went missing. I mean, it was a very long time ago. And if it did swallow an entire army, who would record it? I mean, the Jewish people wrote it in a book. The other guys, however, got killed. The victors write history, you know. That Galileo was found guilty of heresy just because the heliocentric theory went against scripture. The reality is much more complicated. Church authorities were indeed biased by scripture and the long-held view of Aristotelian cosmology, but in fact the heliocentric theory also went against the best science of the day. For example, one way to definitively prove that the Earth moved in space would be to observe parallax, the different apparent position between stars when the Earth is on one side of the Sun versus the other. Galileo deliberately looked for such parallax to support his views, but never found it, and conveniently never mentioned this in his writings. Galileo was right all along, as we now know. But the prevailing geocentric view of the world was the one most consistent with the available evidence of the time. Add to the story the fact that Galileo was a bit of a jerk who made lots of political enemies, and intense political pressure from Spain to crack down on perceived heretics in the midst of the 30 Years' War, and Galileo is found guilty not of heresy but of strong suspicion of heresy. The whole thing was very messy business. The church largely supported his work. The church only requested that he not argue that the heliocentric model was theologically correct, because the Bible is silent on the issue. The new pope, however, disagreed with him. But rather than bar Galileo from publishing what the pope considered heretical, he merely insisted that Galileo include the geocentric model in his published writings. Galileo, being a first-rate jackwagon, named the proponent of the Pope's belief Simplicio, simpleton, and presented that case in less than flattering methods. Had he not publicly insulted the head of the church, he largely would have been left alone by it. Galileo was in trouble because in his book about cosmology, the church's position was argued by Simplicio, a character who is an idiot. Copernicus never got into trouble because he wasn't insulting the church leadership. Alexander Graham Bell didn't invent the telephone and Edison didn't invent the light bulb. I never thought Edison invented the light bulb. I thought it was common knowledge that he improved the light bulb. They used to burn out quite rapidly, but he extended the life of the filament. And it wasn't even him, it was a team working for his company. How the fact taking an arrow to the knee wasn't some Viking way to say I got married but just something Bethesda made for Skyrim. Lamau, this is a thing people believe now? Incredible. The world is an amazing place. It used to be an adventurer like you, until I took an arrow to the knee. Literally, and God, whoever at Bethesda wrote that line into Skyrim, consciously or not, echoed an earlier line from David Eddings' fantasy novel Queen of Sorcery, Book 2. Chapter 3 of the Belgariad series. Spoken by Count Realdegan to Belgarath the sorcerer, known as Wolf at that point of the story. What happened to your leg? Wolf asked him. An arrow in the knee. The Count shrugged. The result of an old disagreement, long since forgotten. As I recall, you used to get involved in quite a few of those. I thought for a while that you intended to go through life with your sword half drawn. I was an excitable youth, the Count admitted. That most of the dinosaurs did not live in the same timeline/era. We live closer to T-Rex than T-Rex lived to Stegosaurus. I knew that fact, but always amazes me that frogs won't jump out of water that is being boiled slowly. Indeed, the experiment with frog being boiled to death did happen. But usually they leave out that the frogs had some minor brain surgery done to them. Gross. Jesus being the only white dude in the Middle East. He wasn't white. Not sure why this is downvoted. He wasn't white. The only reason he looks white in European paintings and portrayals of him is because, well, white Europeans drew them. To be fair, a European painter in the Middle Ages probably only had white people to use as a reference. Is it really commonly believed that Jesus was white? There's the stereotypical redneck joke, if English was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. But aside from people too uneducated to know better, is it really a common belief? Thanks guys for watching our videos. Before you leave, please like the video. I will see you time. Bye.